I want to welcome you all to our Day Without a Woman panel. And before we kind of get into what that means, I want to give all of the panelists a chance to introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Leah. I am also a first-year student in the graduate program for social work at CSUMB and also part of the Women's March team at CSUMB.
My name is Yolanda Pruitt. I'm the founding executive director of Ladies First, which is a nonprofit mentoring program for adolescent girls of color. Also, I am a student at CSUMB. This is my last year. I will be graduating this year. Yay! And I think my most qualification for speaking today is just my many, many years as an African-American woman. As an African-American woman, that will probably be my most important qualification for today.
My name is Alisha Marie Ragland. I'm co-chair of Monterey County Nonviolent Action Committee, and I am also a graduate student at San Jose State University in the Applied Anthropology program. My qualification as a low-income person from a low-income family, first generation college graduate. I think that my experience is unique in a sense that who I represent, the demographic that I represent, is often not represented in mainstream media. So I'd like to thank all the organizers and Wave Street Studios and Jackie for putting on this event.
I'm Kate Daniels, and do we have mics? Are these on? Yeah. Okay, great. So you can hear me. I'm Kate Daniels, and I'm here as the vice chair of the Democratic Women in Monterey County. That was why I was invited to be part of this panel, I believe. We were one of the sponsors of the march that happened on the day, was it the day after Inauguration Day, or the day after? And I also, 10 years ago today, started an international news publication called the Women's International Perspective. So I've been and we are no longer publishing today, but for 7 years we did publish and was very involved in the international women's movement and very committed to women's voices as a means for social change.
I'm Dr. Vanessa Lopez-Littleton, and I'm very excited to be here today. I am an assistant professor in the Department of Health, Human Sciences, and Public Policy at CSUMB. And a little about me, my background: I'm a registered nurse. I'm also an Army veteran. I'm also the mother of an Army veteran and an Air Force veteran. And I have a daughter who is in the Monterey Unified Peninsula School District right now. And I am one of the people who, I'm into service. And it's so interesting to be here. After living in Orlando, Florida for 15 years, to come to California to be a part of movements, to be a part of change, I'm excited, and I think the future is so bright, and all the things that California has to offer are the things that I want to take part of. So I'm excited to be here and to have this opportunity. Great.
Hi, I'm Karen Araujo, and my qualifications for being here, I don't know, living 53 years on the planet and paying attention, striving to find a life of purpose and meaning that gives me inspiration to wake up every morning and feel good about the day I've lived when I go to sleep at night. I grew up in East Salinas. I'm the 5th generation in my family living in what's now Monterey County. The border kept changing, the flag kept changing, we didn't go anywhere. So I find the whole concept of borders and who belongs where to be fascinating. I do not have in my life some things that mark purpose and meaning in traditional lives in U.S. American families. I'm a singleton and I have no children, and I try to make choices guided by my faith in the goodness of human beings and what's the loving thing to do. So mainly a community organizer, some paid work, and a lot of volunteer. Grateful to be here. Thank you, Jackie.
Let me say one more thing. I wasn't going to say this, but I think it's important that this population know that they're represented. Also, in my life experience, I am a survivor of rape. I'm a survivor of being kidnapped. I'm a survivor of 10 years of chronic depression. So I say those things so that there are women out there that may identify with that, and that they know that their voices are being heard today and that they're being represented.
Thanks everyone for introducing yourselves. I really appreciate you guys' participation in the panel. To get us going, I thought we could.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Okay.
So to get us going, I thought we could talk about what a day without a woman means to us. You know, a lot of stuff I've been seeing in the media has been kind of trying to degrade what today means to us, and I just would really like to know what it means to you, and Leah's going to talk, I think, start us out with a little bit of the history behind today.
Yeah, I was just gonna talk a little bit about the history of the International Women's Day. So it did, as far as I can tell, it started in the U.S. In 1908. 15,000 women marched through New York City, demanding shorter hours, better pay, and voting rights. And there were several different movements, strikes and marches between 1908 and 1911, when the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire happened in New York City, that took the lives of 140 working women, most of them Italian and Jewish immigrants. And this drew a lot of attention to labor conditions for women and became sort of the focus of this new Women's Day that folks had started after the 1908 strike. And so it was celebrated for the first time by the United Nations in 1975, and has become kind of a global phenomenon to celebrate women and to raise awareness about labor, both paid and unpaid, so reproductive labor that women do, as well as paid labor. And there are probably a lot more things about International Women's Day that other folks might know, and feel free to add any other experiences that y'all have.
Well, I'm struck by the fact that in less than 100 years since women earned the hard-fought battle to vote, that we find ourselves in a position now where, in my opinion, women are being greatly disrespected and shut out of the solutions we're seeking as a nation. The leadership in Washington, D.C. right now has been undiversified compared to what we had built up. Looks very homogenous. And while I respect and I love greatly a lot of great white men I know that they are best served in our community is when we have more voices at the table, including women. So we are being shut out of that opportunity, and I'm disheartened to find that, because could have went a very different way, and yet we find ourselves here, and I'm ready to move forward and make sure our voices are heard and we're at the table.
So I agree, and I think that we don't get to equality if we're not at the table, if we don't if we're not involved in the electoral process. But one of the things that's so disheartening to me is the lack of women running for political office. And we're not going to get to equity until we're at the table. We can't just find champions to advocate for us, because we see what happens when they actually get into office. And we've got to push harder. We've got to understand that if we want a seat at the table, we have to put our names on the ballot. And I think when I try to encourage people to run for office, sometimes it's really difficult, but sometimes it's very easy. Some people are ready for this, and I think the time is right. If you have an inkling, if you want to make a change, if you want to make a difference, we're going to have to get our names on that ballot, and we're going to have our voices heard. We have to have a seat at the table.
Great, great.
We can jump in. I was reflecting with my mom, who's in the audience, on the way over here, about, people have been saying the phrase a lot lately. Women's rights are human rights. Women's rights are human rights. Women's rights are human rights. But I think in 2017, especially to the male ear, it's really difficult to recognize how powerful and important that concept is. And in 1995, when Hillary Clinton made that declaration in front of that room of male leaders in Beijing, what they heard was a real threatening statement. It wasn't just, by the way, women's rights are human rights. It was that you are sexist and we're calling you out right now. And they took that as a real threat. It was a real bold statement at the time. And when we were driving over here, we were talking about how, in 1995, when you're born sort of after that time, it's hard to recognize that it was only a few years prior to 1995 that we had our first national conversation about workplace sexual harassment. It wasn't even a concept that we had in this country until 1991. And then the laws, of course, came later. It was only, a couple decades before that interracial marriage was legalized in this country, essentially. It was 1920 that women earned the right to vote. It was just a few years before that women earned the right to own property. It was sometime in the 70s, well, maybe not in this country, it might have been a little earlier, but women at one point in this country couldn't legally get a divorce. And so I think we need that historical perspective and come back to that conversation and understand that women's rights are human rights and what that means. And what's so exciting about this movement, and I didn't get the opportunity to thank you guys, because what this group of social work students from CSUMB are doing for our county is they're providing us the opportunity to participate once again, because we did it at the March, to participate in this global movement for change. And one of the things my mom also mentioned on the way here is that she sort of was muttering to herself that, oh, Karl Marx thought it was the workers of the world who would unite. And really, it's the women of the world who are united. And and so I'm so excited to be here with all of you and to see the amazing things you're doing and just be part of this, because we are on the precipice of change, and I know we're going to succeed. I know we're going to win, and we're going to get to show the world why America is great, has always been, and is never going to change.
I'd kind of like to say that when it comes to politics, because as women, a lot of times we don't recognize our value, and we don't recognize that it's good for us and it's okay for us to have power, that we think that it's only men that should be in positions of power. Alice Walker said something. He said the most common way that people give away their power is because they think that they don't have power. And so in this country, women we've been told that we don't have power, and so we've grown up into that mindset. And we must be represented in politics, as the ladies have said before. And so I have a few statistics, I'm glad that they brought it up. Women make up 51% of the population in the United States, yet only 17% hold seats in Congress. Only 34 women have served as governors in the United States. And so women so we need to change that. In order we need to use our voices, and that's the only way our voices will be heard is through politics. That's the way that we can make some changes in the issues that directly affect us.
So thank you for that. And it's true, we make up a majority of the population, and yet for so many generations, forever in this society anyway, our contributions have been extremely undervalued, and that's why I think today is so wonderful. It obviously borrows from A Day Without a Mexican, that movement, and what that movement shows is just how widespread our industry really is, dependent upon foreign labor, immigrant labor, and I know that there's some contention between the women's movement, the Women's March movement, using that name, but I think it's kind of a shared subjugation, really, for a lot of people, is that the women's labor, women's paid and unpaid labor, is extremely devalued, and the devaluation of any subjugated population's labor serves a purpose, and it serves the purpose of the people in power who don't want to relinquish that power. And in addition to women joining politics, I think there are other ways for our voices to be heard outside of the buildings of where those politicians work and live. We can show up, we can raise our voices, and the most important thing to do is to join other women. Women of color have to be in the center of this movement, and we have to join hands with our male allies. Trans women have to be front and center as well. And the more diverse our movement is, the better it will be. And I'm really happy to be sitting at these tables with all of you today.
Really quick, I like that you mentioned the Day Without Immigrants, and I think, I don't want to offend you, but just by saying a Day Without a Mexican just implies that all Mexicans are immigrants, which
That's true.
continues to pair them up with that phrase that we're immigrants, we're undocumented. So I think there's something to be said about making sure that we use the right language when we talk about these things, because oftentimes, like, someone listening over there that might not know, they're like, oh, it's a Day Without a Mexican, they're all immigrants.
Right.
So I just kind of wanted to point that out. And I really liked that you said that our sisters of color need to be at the forefront, because oftentimes we're always on the sidelines. And that's a really big critique that was made on the National March, was that it failed to address intersectionality, and there weren't enough women of color at the forefront of this march. And that's something that we, with the CSUMB March, that's super important to us. You know, most of us are women of color, so we're really proud to represent the movement in that way. Yeah. Yeah.
That is so important. And, you know, I, as the vice president of the Democratic Women of Monterey County, sort of was not interested in joining the organization until this happened. I mean, until Donald Trump, which I rarely utter his name, was elected president of the United States of America, which is so bizarre and hard to say. But, you know, what I saw is something that I had been seeing in the feminist movement for so many years, which was a failure to recognize the multitude of oppressions that women face. And I think the Democratic Party, too, there's so many people in the Democratic Party that are like so stunned that why would people not be part of this party? Why would people not support us? We stand for everything that they believe in, yet nobody wants to be part of the party that's in the younger generation. Where are the millennials, et cetera, et cetera? Well, you know, it's really going to take people to recognize that you don't speak for people, you allow people in to speak for themselves. And it's only until then that, you know, we'll really get the policies right and quit putting our feet in our mouth, so to speak. And so, and I see that for the women's movement too. I am a feminist through and through. I am proud to call myself a feminist. I'm proud to wear that label. But it is really true that the second wave feminist movement really did fail to recognize intersectionality. And if anyone's not familiar with it, I mean, one of the easiest ways to understand this concept was that there was a lawyer who was representing a woman of color who was fired from her job. And she was fired from her job, and she felt that she had been discriminated against. And someone correct me if I'm wrong, please. This is my understanding of it. But she was discriminated against, and the judge looked at the situation and said, well, it's not racial discrimination because there are men of color in the job who were not fired. And then he said it's not gender discrimination because there's white women who do the job right alongside her, and they weren't fired. So she was not discriminated against either racially or based on gender. And so this woman was like, oh my gosh, you know, this really bad, that we fail to recognize the various ways in which we are oppressed in our court system. And so that's where I think that there are real opportunities, and this movement isn't getting that wrong, and that is what's really exciting about the Women's March movement, is they get that we will not succeed unless we do this together. We can't make the same mistakes that we've made in the past. And so I love that that word is a buzzword and that people are starting to get it, because we can't move forward without that basic recognition.
So you mentioned intersectionality and feminism, so I'll talk about that. So maybe 2 weeks ago, I had a conversation with my mother, who's 76 years old, and now she is a feminist. Prior to our conversation, she was like, what is that? No, I'm not a feminist. Because it has all of these negative connotations, people associate it with it, that you're anti-male, that it's something that's not positive. And so understanding that you're fighting for equality and equality of opportunity, I think that kind of just did it for her. And she's like, yes, I'm for that, right? And so I think it's a part of the education and making people aware of what feminism is and what we're actually fighting for. And coming from the South, I'll say, for the most part, we've missed the mark. There are so many people out there like myself who really just don't get feminism. Until I moved to California, I didn't get it either, but now I get it. And so, I don't want to. You shouldn't have to move to California. You shouldn't have to move to California to get it, right? And so we have to do a better job of sharing what that is and why it's so important to the future of this country. And so when you mention intersectionality, it just makes me think about myself. Well, growing up in a family, being an athlete my whole entire life, being in the military, being in the Army, sleeping in a tent with 13 guys, I had and kind of still have a male perspective when it comes to thinking about things. And when I walk into a room, I'm first and foremost a African American. I'm Black. That's who I am. My female status actually kind of follows in tow, but it's there. And sometimes when people point things out, well, that's because you're a female, or that's because you're Black, I'm always like, what? Really? I didn't know, because sometimes I don't think about these things. But I know, but since I've been in California, we're quick to point them out. You gotta look at these things, and I'm going like, oh my God, this is, insane. And so we have to think about the lens through which people view things. And for me, I understand that my primary lens is that racial lens. It's always there. Coming from the South, having experienced racism, discrimination, oppression, all of that, just because of the color of my skin, it's very difficult to get past that. And then when you layer on the whole notion that I am a female, so there are doors that are actually closed to me, that my income might not be parallel to some of my peers who have the exact same qualifications, that we still have to deal with these things in 2017. And it's not going to get any better unless we do something about it. Right. So our advocacy, our support, our voices, these things are more important now than ever. I mean, the work that people did before, all of those things are important and it's created the foundation, but there is so much more work to do. And so I'm excited to be a part of it.
Great. Yes. Yes.
I want to just chime in on some of the things that you said. Was one of the things when you mentioned about the millennium and the younger people, because that's a passion for me as young ladies and guiding them to the future. And one of the things, there was a quote that I heard that says, they can't be it if they can't see it. So it's very important for us as older and mature women to teach them, to expose them, to share the stories, the success stories of the women that have accomplished things in life, so that they have a life example, they have something that they can strive for, so that they feel that they do have a voice and that they are important and that they can make a contribution. And that way that we can start making changes in our future. We're here and this is where we are today, but the young people are out there and they're coming into the future, and so we need to groom them and expose them and teach them, and in order for them to be able to be leaders of tomorrow.
Yeah, I just wanted to say again how thankful I am to be on a panel with all of you. It's just amazing hearing what everyone has to say, and I feel so lucky.
I just also wanted to, I know someone mentioned making sure that transgender individuals are front and center in this fight, and I just want to echo that and make sure that that's heard loud and clear, because I know that that was also a big criticism of the Women's March on Washington and the Women's March in general, that trans women did not feel included and felt particularly excluded by a lot of the like female anatomy, like signs and pussy hats, and you know, it's hard to get everything right, but I think it's important to have a dialogue about it and have conversations like we're having now, you know, and you know, rather than coming from like a defensive place, just listen and talk with each other, because that's what we're here for, right? So yeah, I think it's really important. Transgender women are some of the most vulnerable at-risk people, especially trans women of color are getting murdered at higher and higher rates in our country. So it's really, really important that we include them. Yeah. And yeah. And Transgender Day of Visibility is on March 31st. So find an event. I know the Diversity Center, I forgot to mention, that's where I'm doing my MSW internship. I'm the social worker at the Diversity Center in Santa Cruz, and we're going to be having an event that day. So,
yeah. I think what I'm hearing a lot of you guys kind of echo is the sense that we need to be communicating, you know, across racial lines, you know, gender, everything, and youth and the older generation, you know, is that dialogue and communication needs to be at the center of this movement. Because if we're not communicating with one another and expressing those emotions and what we're feeling and our sources of oppression, then we're horizontally oppressing ourselves. Right. You know, and that's what a lot of our, the counterparts that don't agree with this movement, that's what they feed off of. The fact that we're not agreeing, and they're seeing that there are these cracks in the movement. And I think things like this, you know, we can march all we want, but if we don't stop and talk to one another and listen, then I don't think that we're not going to be able to move forward. So I've been hearing a lot, I haven't checked the news today, but a lot about the changes in healthcare recently. Yeah. There's a mic over here if you want to.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Winchester. I'm a lot of you. I'm from Planned Parenthood. So, I have a couple of comments off the top. One is, it's a sad state of affairs when women's health care becomes a political football. And that Planned Parenthood, as you may or may not know, has been around for 100 years now. And we've been fighting this fight for 100 years. Because in 1916, 30 days after Margaret Sanger opened the first clinic in Brooklyn, she was thrown in jail for distributing information about birth control and some rudimentary devices. So we've been fighting this fight for a full century, and we're not going to back down. One of the core principles we operate under is reproductive justice, which is a concept that is specifically about intersectionality and was brought to the fore by women of color. So it talks about how communities of women and families have been oppressed by managing or limiting their reproductive choices. And this goes into economic, gender, racial, immigration, and wage status. So this is a very important concept that we carry into all of our work. And you may or may not know that most of our patients are people who live below the federal poverty line. So they're the most vulnerable communities, including transgender people. You probably know in Santa Cruz, we pioneered outpatient transgender care, and now our people teach it around the country. So Planned Parenthood becomes a lightning rod. It becomes a short of abbreviation for all of those kinds of feminist issues. Because if a woman can't control her reproductive life, she can't control the rest of her life. So again, but it's not just women in general. Now, most of the people we serve on a day in, day out basis, and that's 2.5 million women per year in the United States, are vulnerable and underserved populations. The one other thing I wanted to say is there's a phrase that I remembered listening to you, Vanessa, about participation of women in politics. I first heard it from Cecile Richards, who is the CEO of Planned Parenthood, but I don't know who originated it. I think it's so good it had to be older. And it's, if you're not at the table, if we don't have a seat at the table, we're on the menu.
I'd like to say something about what my sister shared about Planned Parenthood. It's very frustrating to me when I hear the national conversation or any conversation about Planned Parenthood reduced to simply a matter of a woman's right to choose. When Planned Parenthood provides health care so far beyond that, and education, and in my life, the demographics and what was going on in my life as a child, as an adolescent, growing up in East Salinas with all of the environmental traumas I was going through, things in my family, our economics and everything. Statistics said I should have been pregnant by a certain age, unwed, blah, blah, blah. And that didn't happen. And I thank Planned Parenthood for that, because I understood, I had picked up on what that was. And even though I had a great relationship with the adults in my household, and they welcomed me coming to them directly to speak to them, and I did not. I chose not to. And I went and I did what I needed to do. And that allowed me to do exactly what the name says, to plan whether or not I wanted to be a parent. In my life, I decided that was not what I wanted. And I did not have to, I did not have to make the choice to terminate a pregnancy. I haven't had to make that choice. But I had the birth control, I had education, I've never had a problem with the sexually transmitted disease because I was aware. And that is, as being a woman, living my life, being fully alive, which includes being a sexual being and not being held back by other people's ideas of what I should and should not do. I am a responsible adult. I have been, and it allowed me, and my life could have been very different had I had an unplanned pregnancy. So I thank Planned Parenthood for that, and I'm grateful to them, and I'm happy to be able to share that story publicly.
Thank you. Growing up, I had a lot of friends who felt like they were safe enough. They could go to Planned Parenthood. It's and
for all kinds of people.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any way to say thank you for all that you do for everyone.
Tell the story and write a check.
And then,
So I knew Planned Parenthood would come up today, so I decided to test the waters with my students at school. So I talked about the fact that our president is now threatening Planned Parenthood with removing the funding. And as a healthcare professional, I'm really deeply troubled by that. And so I wanted to see what students thought, what the temperature was. Not that I thought that people would be very contentious, but some of the students were very strong in their statements and what they said. And what I took away from that is that students understand that this is actually about taking away something that they need access to. So it's not just about abortion. It's about taking away funding from an organization that serves women with a plethora of services. So, you know, as a healthcare professional, I just go back to the fact that if you remove the funding, then you take away healthcare services from so many women who need it. And that to me is the most unfortunate part. If abortions were illegal and Planned Parenthood were doing them, then that would be a problem. I would be like, yes, we need to do something. But it's legal. And so it's on a menu of available services. That doesn't mean that everyone who walks in the door, that's what they're doing. But when people talk about it, when our elected officials speak about it, that's what they're saying. So it's framed in such a way where the lay public thinks everything that happens at Planned Parenthood is linked to abortion, and it's not true. And it's even when we talk about the percentages of services that are available, that actually abortions make up, they still refute that and say, well, that's their statistics, as if they're inside of the organization looking at everything that happens. And so it's just so disheartening that the people that we've put in charge of our healthcare policy in this country are framing something that's so personal and making it into something that's just something that it's not. So,
Yes.
By the way, we didn't put them in charge of it. They took charge.
I think that there are two things too. Going back to the statement, women's rights are human rights. There's two things that are clearly happening to me. And one is that they're taking away services from the most vulnerable population on so many levels. It's other services outside of healthcare services. It's services across the board that this administration is threatening. But at the very core of it too, when you think about the percentage of abortions that happen at Planned Parenthood and the multitude, 3%, and the multitude of other services that are provided, this administration and so many politicians in the past are hell-bent on punishing women. That is what it's about at its very core. And when you go back to that statement in 1995, that women's rights are human rights, that was being said to to nations around the world that had no problem openly treating women as second-class citizens. They had no problem every day having legislation, rules, and laws in place that specifically punished women. They didn't care if women starved to death. They didn't care if women went to school. They didn't care if women were bleeding to death based on traditional practices such as female circumcision. It simply was the fact that they did not care. And what's so scary to me about this administration is it seems that we're becoming more open and public about what many people across the spectrum seem to truly believe. And that is really frightening to me. If you look at the acts of violence that are racially inspired, that are happening across this country, that this is the underbelly of America that feels liberated to come out and act on what they believe is terrifying. And then just to bring it back to local politics, I worked for a woman who ran for office and won. And she is now an elected official in Monterey County. And we see it here. There's a recall effort that, to me, if you get down to the heart of it, what is the recall about? It's about misogyny. People cannot handle that she is where she is. And they're making it about immigration. They're making it about the resolution that was passed at the county level. But that's the reality. And it's frightening. And so it's exciting to be in this room with all of you, and I hope that by the end of this conversation we have some action items too, because in my head I'm thinking as we're talking about, especially with Planned Parenthood, what can we do to just torment Steve Bannon and Donald Trump? And I think it has to do with something on social media that will just drive them so crazy that they finally explode and leave us alone. That's what I want to see happen.
Women have been radicalized since this whole debacle has been long on our country. Women have been more radicalized, and they are getting involved. And I think, I mean, if anyone is against a woman, just tell her that she can't do something, and you'll be your own defeat in the end. And that's certainly true for me and the women in my family, and I'm proud to have those roots. But also about Planned Parenthood, I just want to bring it back into this intersectionality sphere, is that when we talk about eliminating states, or the federal right for a woman to control and assert power over her own body and control whether or not she's going to become a mother, is the popular argument anyway against that is, well, states should choose. And the reason why that's so insidious is that if you have money, you can travel across state lines. You can travel, this is a broader argument on healthcare as well, you can travel to seek the healthcare services that you need, but if you're a woman in my demographic, you can't. You will not be able to, you know, at least until your circumstances change. And so when we talk about the services that will be defunded from Planned Parenthood, we need to think about the women who are able to make the effort and get those services from somewhere else, and the women that subsequently will not be able to get those services.
Thank you.
Everything that's being said here is just really touching a lot of spaces within me, and I really, really so appreciate that. It just, you know, strengthens my feelings and about being a woman and about being with all of you. One of the things that, and I had several things that I wanted to say as each of you were talking, but the most recent was when you were talking about what Planned Parenthood is about and what it actually does. And as a person who sits in front of the television, or mainly that's what it is, or watches on, looks on the internet, what you hear is that it's all about abortion. So the only reason that they, quote unquote, want to get rid of Planned Parenthood or defund them is because of abortion. And what is so outrageous is that if the other vital things are taken care of, then there's less abortion. And that's how you can change that phenomenon. And apparently statistics prove that abortion is less and less and less as the years have gone by. How do we change what is happening on our TVs and what is happening on our computers? Because that is what people are seeing. And unless we refute that, unless we can create, how do we do that? And so that's really my question. How do we change what people are seeing so that they can change their response to it?
One other thing that Kate just said was that a lot of men don't care about the health and well-being of women. And while I'm certain that that is true, because they've demonstrated it time and time again, I think a lot of men, they do care, and they would care if they knew what we went through, if they knew our struggles, and if they knew our anatomy even. But we have these men who don't even understand basic anatomy making the rules for our anatomy, and that's unacceptable. That's completely unacceptable in any rational society. And I think it's hilarious that women have been demonized as the irrational, but everything we're saying up here is extremely rational, and all we're asking for is a seat at the table, so we're not on the menu. And so women need to be more vocal. Thank you for sharing intimate details. Thank all of you for sharing personal stories from your lives, because that's how we educate people. And this culture of silence and of fear of speaking out is only perpetuating men who don't care, and men who would care if we did speak out and we shared our stories with them. And it's not a matter of if they want to listen or not. The time is up. You're going to listen. This is a woman with this is a world full of women, and you're going to listen to our stories. We're not going to be silenced anymore.
I really love what you're saying. Stories are what came to mind when I was listening to our sister speak at the mic a moment ago. A quote comes to mind of a wonderful feminist, powerful woman, Rosemary Matson, may she rest in peace, founder of Unitarian Universalist Women in Religion and so many other things. And one of her quotes, bookmarks and t-shirts, exists somewhere, where it says, we don't just want a piece of the pie, we want to change the recipe. And I love that. But it is, I would say, in answer to the question, is by telling our stories and by being clear about going forward and telling that story rather than simply responding to an accusation or something that comes up, that always puts us, responding to someone else's agenda and kind of chasing it. Instead of, that reminds me of something, here's what I'm going to say about that. And then let them, if they want to say, well, what does that have to do with what I just said? Okay, then maybe I'll engage them. But take it as an opportunity to share our truth, to speak the truth loudly and clearly. And by doing it in the form of a story, we know that that moves people in a different way. I think that, I wish I knew what the word was. It's not patriarchy, it's another word. The Reverend Forrest Gilmore did a sermon on it at the Unitarian Church once. It's a word that means ruled by boys or ruled by adolescents, adolescent males, and really, and it's not patriarchy, because patriarchy, just like a matriarchy, shared rule by strong, wonderful women, great thing. Shared rule by strong, wonderful men, great thing. It's the rule by boys and adolescents who have all the trappings or bank accounts of a grown-up, yet they don't have the wisdom that comes from living more on the planet. And that's what we have now, is we have rule by temper tantrum having boys with a lot of who are home alone and have the keys to the car and the debit card. So that's what's frightening.
Can I say one thing about the feedback loop that someone was, the questioner had asked about? I call it the algorithm problem, and it came with Facebook, and it comes with Google, and you're in a constant feedback loop based on what you like, and the news is given to you and delivered to you based on what you like. And I just read something yesterday that's, I think, very positive, that some of these social media companies are finally taking responsibility for that, and they're actually putting new algorithms in place that will give participants on Facebook the opportunity to see more than what was usually just being fed to them in terms of what their own personal feedback loop looked like. So I don't know if they'll just turn off Facebook when they see what they don't want, but at least it's a step in the right direction.
Good. I think I agree, but one of the things I think we need to do is to demand the truth. I think a lot of the things that we see on the news is not true, and it's so odd that I'm a news junkie. I've watched at least 3 hours of news in the morning, and then I watch at least maybe 4 to 6 hours of news at night. Right? How do I work? I don't know. I'm a consumer, but I don't watch one source of news. I'm constantly going back and forth, and I'm looking for new. I'm looking to hear new ideas, and I've become frustrated. I used to be able to watch CNN for at least 2 to 3 hours, but now I can probably only muster a total of maybe 30 minutes a day. And the reason I say that is interspersed throughout their cast, they have people on a panel who are lying, and we know they're lying. And no one calls them out, or the host will say something like, well, that may not be true, but it's muted. It's not like, that is not true. I mean, you can say you're a bold-faced liar. I mean, maybe that's not a good thing to do on a panel, but I'm so anxious because they continue to bring these folks on TV, and some people believe the words that are coming out of their mouths, and I don't know what to do about that. I think it's an opportunity. I mean, I've written to CNN, I guess they don't care, but I want the truth, and I want the media to be more responsive to putting out the truth. And when they don't know, then don't say anything. And they can't, because we're on this 24-hour news cycle. We want to be first. We don't want to be right. We don't want to be accurate. We just want to be first. And that to me means nothing. I don't care if you're first. I want the truth. I want facts. So that's kind of a thing that we can do, but I don't know what that thing actually is. I mean, demanding the truth, demanding accurate information, getting liars off the TV, whatever works.
One way that we can
alternative facts.
Control that is by, once again, going back to our youth and training them up to be a part of the media, by pooling our resources together, and because television, I look at it as television. So whoever has the most money, that's the vision that we're all going to get.
Yes.
We're going to get their vision. So as women, if we can somehow come together and pool our resources together and break into that industry, then we'll have an opportunity then to say things that are important, that are true. We'll be able to tell what the true side of things. So that's an option, ladies. We can get together. I mean, if we put things together, by the interest of things about the yard is hard. So if we get together and pool our resources together and get more involved in the control aspect of the media, then maybe we can have then we will have a voice that can be heard and with things that are important to us and truth.
Yeah, along those lines, where we're sitting right now, Wave Street Studios, they have offered this space for a lot of activist groups in Monterey on Fridays from 2 to 3. Yeah. So you all can tune in. It's typically Fridays from 2 to 3. The Women's March at CSUMB, our next show will be on March 31st. And always feel welcome to come. We love to have live audiences at the shows.
It's called Resistance TV.
Yes.
Resistance TV.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jan Schreiner. I'm an elected official in Marina. Yeah, I was kind of wondering if there were any other elected people here right now. Okay. Elected people who have been elected, serving right now? Okay.
I guess we are. We just formed our club on campus.
Nice. A little bit of family story. My great-grandmother Nina was a bilingual daughter of an immigrant from Norway and a suffragist. So Norway was one of the first 2 countries to allow women to vote. And when her family was here, they wanted to bring that. So this is for my grandma Nina too. She made it to be almost 80 years old, but she's not with us anymore. And she taught me a lot, even as a small child. But the person who really inspired me to take the elected role was Dolores Huerta. And she was invited to CSUMB a few years ago in 2007 is the one time I saw her there. In celebration of the National Cesar Chavez Day, right? It's coming up. March 31st is coming up. So I went to hear her at the World Theater, which I understand is named the World Theater because of Native American traditions on this coast. By Luis Valdez, he was part of the naming. So she was at the World Theater, and this is 2007, right? This is when George Bush was president. She was explaining to everyone there they should consider taking the next step. So if they were already voting, then maybe contribute or work for a campaign. If you're already working or contributing money to a campaign, take it to the next step and help organize a campaign. If you're already organizing a campaign, take it to the next step and run for office. So I was already at that level, right? I was already an appointed commissioner on the Public Works Commission. I was already had been a campaign manager. So that was 2007. I was sitting there thinking, oh, can I do that? And she said, like reading my mind, right? If you are thinking that you are not enough, that you are not smart enough, that you are not collaborative enough, just look at who your president is. And she made right? It turns out, right? This is another generation. I mean, this is almost 10 years later. Look at us. Look at us. So I didn't I mean, I laugh too, but I really begged other people to run for office instead of me. And I finally, I finally did it, and it was hard, it's super hard. And I totally appreciate the men and women who know how hard it is and provide some support. So if you're not quite ready to be a candidate, at least contact some of your female commissioners and electeds and really appreciate them, whether it's on Facebook, in person, whatever it is. It's not an easy job, and you can't assume that they remember how smart they are, right? That, you know, even Facebook, we have in Seaside now, someone who won office on city council, Kayla Jones, only 23 years old. Yeah.
First woman in
20 years. I used to think, what's wrong with Seaside? And then
there you go.
Kayla Jones. So, you know, I really appreciate that she is so young. She's a mom. She's helped to bring about already. The council is providing a small stipend to support childcare while she's in her meetings, right? So, we, you know, women, come on, let's do this. And I appreciate those men who consider the women to be their collaborative ally. You know, let's give those guys a hand too. They are great. So thank you. I just wanted to mention, you know,
Thank you,
George
Jen.
Huerta and
Thank you.
some solution that we all can take that next step.
Thank you. Thank you.
She said something that is really dear to my heart. I love the fact that your mother and your grandmother told you stories and that they encouraged you and they told you you can do that. Because for so many of our girls in the community, and especially low-income families, what they hear is, you're too dumb, you're too stupid, you're not smart enough, you'll never make it, you'll never succeed. So we have to change that around. We have to teach our girls that they are smart enough, that they can do these things. And in teaching them that, they will see their own self-value. And it brought to mind a story, something that happened with Ladies First. We were looking for participants in our program, and I found it so very interesting that the parents wanted to support the girls in being cheerleaders, and they did not want to support the girls in a program that was teaching them skills on how to be better and to how to improve the quality of their lives. So we have to change the perspective of who we are, and especially so that we can groom and we can grow strong leaders. We have to tell those stories. We have to encourage. We have to teach them that they can do science, that they can do math, that they can be whatever it is that they want to be, that their dreams can come true, that their visions, not to be afraid of their visions, to stand up and to persevere to accomplish their visions. So it's psychological. That's how we've gotten to where we are in thinking that we are not valuable because people have told us that. So now we have to reverse that. And a good place to start is with our youth and encouraging them to step out and to learn their value and to educate themselves so that they can make strong decisions and contributions to the community and to the world.
Just one thing about elected women and the fact that we are 51% of the population. As Supervisor Jane Parker always reminds people, we've heard other people, yes, Jane Parker. And we've heard from other people, women are so potent in their leadership, and the energy they bring is so powerful that you don't have to have 51% on any elected body to have an impact. You only need one third of the body being women. Boosts huge the collaboration level, the long-range planning, the transparency, all these wonderful things that make good quality solutions. And so if you're thinking about it, I heard somewhere a woman has to be asked 5 times before she says yes. So 6, okay, 7. Vanessa said once. I'm speaking to you out there, the person who is wondering right now, are they speaking to me? You heard Vanessa, you heard Jan, here comes number 3. Yes, I'm speaking to you. We are speaking speaking to you. You have just been asked for at least the third time. Move yourself to that yes, and you will have a support team behind you to help you. And you are enough. You are exactly what we need. Say yes to running for elected office.
Yay.
My name is Jacqueline Woodward. I just wanted to share something that I noticed in the last few days when the Republicans are talking about dismantling the Affordable Care Act. They speak of defunding Planned Parenthood as if it's a given. And they say it over and over again. And I'm just wondering what we're doing to counteract that. And also, if that day comes, if there's some kind of organization for women to really react and show that this is not okay. So, but it's just something that I've been noticing, and it's very scary. Thanks.
Yes, so there's a section of the draft bill that has just come out of the House that specifically addresses this defunding. One of the things to remember is that Planned Parenthood is not a line item in the federal budget. We don't get a block grant. We accept, closer? I was afraid of that feedback. We accept Medicaid as insurance. And about 70% in this area, in my affiliate, about 70% of our patients are on Medicare because they qualify, because as I said, they're below 100% of the federal poverty line. So they come to us for a service, which may be a breast cancer screening or whatever, and we submit a bill to Medicaid, which in California is Medi-Cal, just the way you would as if it was Blue Cross. So what the bill says is that they created a category of prohibited entities from accepting Medicaid reimbursements. And the way it's written, Planned Parenthood is the only organization that fits that description. So now remember, there's a long journey between this draft and it's really Paul Ryan and Mike Pence who are pushing this. Trump, no one knows what he really believes about health care. Until it goes to conference and it becomes any kind of enacted legislation. So we think that there's a lot of pushback. Some of the pushback is specifically about Planned Parenthood, but much of the other pushback is about the mandates, changing the exchanges, and the 20 million people who will now be without health care. So there are various constituencies fighting it. So figure it's going to be months and months until that happens. But meanwhile, we're not sitting on the sidelines. We are readying all kinds of contingency plans. And Planned Parenthood is not alone. We have partners in doing that. The ACLU is standing right beside us, and the Center for Reproductive Rights, which is a group of very brilliant attorneys that argued the trap law case and won in front of the Supreme Court last June. So first, we are looking, number one, we'll look for allies in the House and the Senate to fight passage of the bill. There's some light there, especially in the Senate. Lisa Murkowski, Republican of Alaska, may be on our side, and a few other moderates like that. The House is a little different equation, but there may be some people we can work with. So number one is delay implementation, delay enactment of any kind of defunding legislation. And hopefully, meanwhile, while we're delaying, everyone in this room gets everyone they know and everyone they know to go out and vote in 2018, and we can have a very different calculus in the Senate, especially I think the House is a longer reach. If, however, somehow it passes, at some point in time, this legislation passes to defund us, then the next line of attack is to go into the courts with our partners and litigate and get a stay, an injunction. So, because it's very prejudicial. There are various ways. I can't give you the legal arguments, but there will be legal arguments mounted on how to fight this law. And then if that fails, then to mitigate the results. So governors, I mean, one of the things that we do know that they'll do is throw a lot of things back to the states because they're all big federalists. We've been in conversations with Governor Brown for quite a while on how the state could help mitigate that lack of Medicaid reimbursements. There was a statement made by the governor, the Republican governor of Massachusetts, yesterday or the day before, that Massachusetts will backfill all the federal money that may be taken away. Now, yes, that's a Republican governor in Massachusetts. Now, that, in Massachusetts, that amounts to $2 million. In California, it's hundreds of millions. Just my affiliate receives $70 million a year in Medicaid reimbursement. So I don't think Brown wants to, take that money away from his other pet projects. And Governor Brown is not only going to be in office for another less than 24 months. Another very important election for all of us in this room is the gubernatorial election in 2018. Who is going to replace Governor Brown? So another part of mitigation is donations. Right now, Medicaid does not pay 100% of the services we provide, even when we get reimbursements, because the reimbursement rates were set in 1985, and then there was a cutback, and so a lot of these services are partially paid for by your good grace in donating. So it's a very important part of what keeps us going, and thank you for, Claudia?
Has anyone done a cost analysis of what these services are costing when they're provided by Planned Parenthood versus what they would cost? Oh, man. Has anyone done a cost analysis about what these services would cost if they were having to be provided by emergency rooms and other practitioners and other clinics as compared to what they cost provided by Planned Parenthood?
I don't have an answer to that.
I bet it's a lot cheaper.
I bet you it is. The Guttmacher Institute does a lot of research, and they may have, but I'm afraid I don't have that information. Now, one of the arguments that the other side uses is that, and I heard it in an interview this morning on CNN, is that there are other community clinics, and there are a lot of them around here, Salud de la Val, Salud de la Gente, et cetera. They could backfill. I mean, they don't provide abortion, but they could provide everything else. Well, that's absolutely positively untrue. There are waiting lists of 8 to 12 weeks in most of those community clinics as it is, and they refer their reproductive health care issues to Planned Parenthood. So we're not in competition with them. They're very complementary services.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Susie, and I work here at Wave Street. Woo woo! And I'm a feminist, and I'm a queer lady, and I am a woman of color. I just wanted more clapping, y'all. Let's clap. I'm a daughter of an immigrant. What? Yeah. So I think right now what we have here is like everyone's sort of in the choir, right? Like we're all in the same club in this room, and hopefully who's watching. So I was Facebooking with a friend of mine, and I put something like that I felt really strongly about, it was like a transgender bathroom thing. And I said, trans folks, trans allies, we are the ones that are responsible for educating the people, right, that are afraid only out of ignorance, right? We need to have these conversations with people about what it is to be transgender and what that means, and then people start to open their minds. So I got two comments, one from a non-trans person, so a trans ally, and then one from it was a trans man, and basically they were like, there's too much on us already as trans folks, that it's not our responsibility to carry that weight, right? So I just want to, throw that out there. Like, what do you all think about that in particular? Because I think it's a shared thing, right? We can't have trans allies taking over the movement, right? But then it's like, at what point is there so much going on that it really just, I'm a trans person, I don't have time to deal with it. What do you all think about that idea of who's responsible? That's my question.
Yeah, that's
Thank you. That's a pretty good question, yeah.
I think that your question really applies to people of color, to trans people, to gay people, to lesbians, to women, everyone who's in a position of being oppressed. And this happens to me a lot. People will come up to me and ask me questions about racism and this and that. And at first I was really happy to answer because I was so excited that they wanted to be involved in this dialogue. But it gets to this point that it's exhausting to have to explain things to people all the time. I know because it's the perspective that I live, and I'm happy to answer, but Google it, look it up, read a book. Yeah, exactly. It's like we as oppressed people can't hold all of the responsibility to educate everyone. If you care about your sisters of color, trans people, immigrants, undocumented people, then you need to take the responsibility to research these things and find out what you think and do that work on yourself to get to the point to where you can actually benefit our movement and help us.
I guess what I'm asking a little bit more specifically is, to say Google that, I mean, I say that all the time.
Yeah.
But what I think is the most important piece maybe is to open up to another human being who disagrees with you and be able to sit with that discomfort and then get that person inspired to go Google that shit, Yeah,
and I think that's really important too. Is I heard from a professor in one of our classes, and he said that I think Trump getting elected might actually be a good thing for this country because it's opening up these opportunities for dialogue and getting people mad enough to want to do something. And like you said, to create change, we have to sit with one another, someone who doesn't agree with you, and be uncomfortable for a few minutes and understand where each other is coming from, and hopefully motivate that person who doesn't agree with you to want to look it up and genuinely want to care.
This is so interesting because I was one of those people. I was writing a paper the other day, and this came up. When I first got to, I'm a baby boomer, right? And when I first got to CSUMB, I had a class in professional communication. And I went to the Learning Center, the tutor, to find out how to write my paper, to get some help. And the young lady, Kimber, who's in the audience, she's a beautiful young lady, and we're talking, and she said something about the LGBTQ community. And I'm like, huh? What is that? And so she explained it to me, and because I had no clue what it was. But the thing is, when she explained it to me, and then I started watching and looking and around our campus, and I have a homosexual teacher that I just absolutely love, and Kimber, and I'm watching her professionalism. I'm a Christian, African-American Christian woman, and so I had a certain bias. But it was through my interaction with Kimber, with my interaction with my professor, with me looking around and talking to people that are in that community, that changed my bias about it. Then I began to see a common ground that I have with them as being an African American woman and being suppressed and being oppressed and going through all of that. So now I have a whole different perspective. So my point is that I think one-on-one communication is a beautiful thing because from one, it touches another and touches another. We may not all have the media, the platform to do it on a large scale, but when we as we, but explaining to one of each other and sharing our views with each other, I think that's how we all can learn and grow together and become one.
Yeah, love it.
So this specific example has to do with transgender folks. However, the example that I'm going to give could be taken and use your imagination and apply it to whatever groups you're involved in. My church has an annual convention. We have about 4,000 to 5,000 people that show up for that, and we rotate around the nation. And creating a more just space whenever you are part of having a gathering is a way to encourage people to bump up against things questions they didn't even know, right? We don't even know what we don't know. It creates an opportunity for them to look further. So what we do is we ask everyone, what can we do to make this a more hospitable environment for you, y'all, everybody? And transgender folks came to us and said, if you could help us with the bathrooms, that would help. And this has been years ago. So at the Unitarian Universalist General Assembly, we require, when we're at the convention center, and some of these areas are open to the public while we're there because they have art exhibits and other groups going on, that they convert. We require that they convert some of their bathrooms. And we have signage that says, you may experience this. Be aware, if you walk in here, this may happen. And then when you're sitting down at the stall in the back of the door, there's some information about transgender issues. And for more information, you may want to visit here. And we do that, and boy, do we get pushed back. Now that's just part of it. And of course, we're having national discussions. But even within ultra-liberal religious community and very lefty folks, we bumped up against, didn't think about that. And now it's just part of what we do, and we help educate the public and educate ourselves and become more hospitable. But you can do this in your meetings. You can say, hey, bring your kids. Hey, we're going to have some food because you're working folk and you're coming right from work. All these different things. Bring your elders. Just things to make it more hospitable and welcoming to everybody. Just ask, what can we do to make this better for you? And then do it.
And really making sure that you're reaching out to all communities that should be represented at your events. And I think a lot of times we really focus on the communities that we live in or the communities that we're familiar with, but I think it's really important to do our homework and really figure out ways to bring everyone to the table. I know that's something we're trying to do at the Diversity Center, even though it's a GLBTQ friendly, it's for that community. There's also some problems where folks from the transgender community are not feeling fully represented there. So we're really working harder, and also folks of color, and so we're working harder to try to bring other communities there. And I think that's so important for every type of organization. Yeah.
One thing I'll add is simply because you represent or you're part of a group doesn't mean that you're the spokesperson for that group, and it doesn't mean that you should feel empowered to speak up or to advocate for that. I've got a sister who's 2 years older than I am, and if you asked her, well, what does it feel like to be black? And she'd probably say, I'm black, I don't know. She's just, a part of corporate America. She's living her life, and it's not a thing for her until I make it a thing, because I do that. But, there she goes with all that race stuff. But for some of us, it's very visceral. It's there. And so I think it's okay. If you want to have a voice and if you want to be at the table, then it's fine. But I don't think people should feel like, it's your responsibility as an LGBT or as a trans that you have to say something, that everything that we do, we need a Hispanic, a black, a white, sometimes I used to teach a writing class, and I used to make fun of that long acronym, the LGBTQRSA, you get this whole thing going, and inevitably you're going to miss somebody. So what is enough? And do you really need to be singled out in that acronym, right? Do you really, so it's you know, it's an opportunity for growth and it's learning. And sometimes I think, especially as it relates to a college environment, because you see this a lot in college environments, because we're learning, we're working very hard to be inclusive, and we don't want to exclude anyone. But sometimes I think our efforts actually end up not doing what we intend them to do. So we have to be very careful in the way that we do these things.
Awesome, thank you all. Yeah, I think something that I just thought about is the idea of like we're all doing our best, right?
Absolutely.
Like we're all trying as much as we can, and maybe there's that one day where I don't want to answer that question, but that like to you know grow spiritually, I'm working on trying to be more patient with these folks that a lot of it is just ignorance, you know, and they need exposure and they need encouragement and they need compassion to open the mind, right? So thank you all for your responses.
Thanks, Susie.
Thank you, Vanessa, for bringing that up, because like you said, black women should not be, a single black woman should not be the voice for all black women. That doesn't make sense, and it's also a very unfair and unrealistic responsibility for one person to bear. And one trans man or one trans woman should not be the spokesperson for all trans men or women. And what it comes down to is just trying to be a person in a society. Like we're trying to normalize our position, whether we are a woman of color, whether we're a rape survivor, whether we're a trans woman or whatnot. We're trying to normalize our position in society, and to be always on the spot and to always have to be tasked with answering everyone's questions, it's actually adding more distance between us. And we do live in the information age, and we do have the opportunity, no matter where we are at almost any time, to Google it yourself, and the other thing is, I want people to raise their hand. How many people know someone who voted for Trump? I do. I'm related to one. Okay, so yeah. So we know in our own circles that we have some responsibility to do. We have some responsibility to reach out to people who we're connected with. And if we think that they're going out into the world and spreading hate, then it is our responsibility to stop them before they go and spread hate to someone who is more vulnerable than you or I. Right, so we do have personal responsibilities within our own circles, and part of that is what you were saying is, and a lot of people are saying here, is you do need to educate the people who you're closest with, but part of that is so that they don't go out into the world and spread hate and ask that someone else demand to rationalize their position in society just because it's different from that person's position. And I just want to take this moment to channel Audre Lorde. I have this quote. I'm so glad that I get to use it. It is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. So it's not about being different and demanding, well, why are you different from me? It's, I'm different. Get used to it.
I think here, what I'm hearing and what I experience, the bottom line is not the label that people have put on us. The bottom line is our character. What type of person we are inside, and how do we treat each other. That's what we should be focusing on most, and opposed to the labels that people have given us and that we've had to live under.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to be Debbie Downer or dispute the woman from Planned Parenthood, but I really am very fearful that we probably have 10 days to oppose the changes in our healthcare system. I believe, and I hear on the radio and on NPR and on the other news, I'm also a news junkie, that the Republicans are absolutely hell-bent on passing this within the next 10 days, that they will get the cost estimates probably the day before they will push forward a vote, and I think we have a very short timeline. I hope you're right, and we may end up with years of litigation, but I actually think that we need to be thinking about our actions in this next 10 days.
Then 10 days to get through the House.
10 days to get through the House. We do have a better chance in the Senate. But, as I heard last night, there were many senators who were
never Trumpers. There were many senators who were not going to vote for this or that, and they, in the confirmation hearings, and they caved very easily. So this is a huge issue. It's an issue for the poor, it's an issue for the elderly, it's an issue for women. I worked for many, many years in our county mental health system. The waiting lists are huge, and driving over here, I heard them talk about the fact that requiring health insurances to provide mental health and substance abuse services was one of the reasons that this health care is going belly up. And so if we want to withdraw the services that we're providing for yet another vulnerable population, we need to be ready to take action this week, I believe. Let's get this stopped before it gets started. And you know, there are definitely issues to be addressed in reforming our healthcare system, but what we have before us is not the answer. So I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but I'm going to be doing something in this next week, and I would encourage you all to be thinking about that right here and now, because a lot of us didn't believe that Trump was going to get elected.
Well, yeah, that's
he's
right.
Sitting in our White House.
He prevailed in the Electoral College. Did not secure the popular vote by millions.
So something that I plugged at the Women's March we had on campus was this website called the65.org, and some of you might be familiar with it. A lot of us are thinking, what can we do in these next 10 days to, you know, maybe prevent this from happening? And calling senators and our elected congressmen does make a big effect, and it changes things. And so if we continue to do that, this website, the65.org, has a weekly call to action, and one of their action items right now is for Planned Parenthood. So if we can keep making those calls, I know for me it seems like some of the momentum was maybe a little bit earlier on after the inauguration and everything, but let's keep it going. Let's keep it flowing, because it's really important right now.
Another website called change.org, and they are very on top of everything that is going on and are putting out weekly petitions and postcards to be sent out, and it's just time to keep our energies up.
We have about
35 minutes.
Okay, I wanted to mention in response to that and what you just said about the 65, there's two local groups that come to mind. One is Indivisible Monterey Bay. You'll find them on Facebook, but any Indivisible group, y'all can start an Indivisible group if you wanted to find out how to lobby elected officials at the national level and how to push to affect change. And then the other is this Saturday, Elizabeth mentioned that ACLU and Planned Parenthood are working together. ACLU nationally is getting millions of dollars. People are responding. People are looking to the ACLU for help, and the ACLU is responding in an unprecedented way. They haven't been involved in grassroots organizing, and they are doing it. You know, a lot of us say, somebody ought to do something, and you look around and say, oh, it's me, right? We are the ones we've been waiting for, as Sweet Honey in the Rock sings. I don't know who said that originally. We are the ones we're waiting for. The ACLU is hosting resistance trainings around the nation this Saturday, March 11th, and it's called People Power Action. And they're happening in homes. If you like a small event, just look that up online, People Power, ACLU People Power. People are hosting them in their homes. And also, Mickey Welch, who is the legal committee chair, requested that we book a larger event here in the area. So just today, actually, what I did right before coming here was to book one at the Center for Change, which is the headquarters for the Democrats. However, it is like the Monterey Peace and Justice Center, a community space, like Wave Street Studios is a community space. It is opening their doors to community groups to come. So it's at the Center for Change, which is the Democratic headquarters, but this is a community event open to the public, 1 o'clock to 4, ACLU, People Power Action, training, And then afterwards, there's going to be planning. What do we want to do? We'll break out into groups, and some of you will want to work on Planned Parenthood. So again, that's on Facebook, or if you just go to the website, put in the zip code for Seaside, you'll see the list of all the events.
I just wanted to mention another event that's happening on Saturday. It is in Santa Cruz, but I think it's a really good example of a community organization that is really working on fighting some of the immigrant raids, the ICE raids that have happened recently in Santa Cruz. It's put on by a group called Your Allied Rapid Response, and it's a training on being a support team, like a community support team for folks that are getting raided by ICE. So that's in Santa Cruz this Saturday. It starts at 2 p.m. And the acronym for the group is YARR. You can find them on Facebook. And I'm not sure if there's any similar organization here in Monterey County, but I thought that was a really good one to share.
Yeah, that's a really good segue into another topic that we wanted to discuss today, and that's just this country's status with immigration and building the wall and the recent reveal of the new travel ban. So, I don't know if anybody here has any thoughts. Personally, that's something that's really near and dear to me. All of my family are immigrants. Some of them are undocumented. So it's that constant fear that people have to live in that maybe they're not going to be here tomorrow. And to me, it's really upsetting to see cities and counties not come out as sanctuary cities for fear of losing their funding. What does that say to the people of their community that they're not important enough to keep safe? I don't know if anybody has anything that they want to speak on.
I'll just say that it goes back to something that we've spoken about a lot on this panel already, is that there's a need for accurate information out there. There's a need for people to stand up to bullies, essentially, and speak the truth. Because, there have been sanctuary movements in cities and counties that don't even actually go far enough in this county. But there are a lot of people that are operating based on misleading information and fear. And they're very loud, and they do, and impressive in a certain way. They leave an impression. But what the reality is that white vans are on their way here, and it's going to be, I think, a really terrifying time. I mean, they're coming. I mean, you read what the Trump administration is saying and the plans that they have action for, and I just think that it's really scary what we're on the verge of experiencing right here in our community. And I'm happy to, be on the right side of history. And I try to tell the people that I work with, don't worry, don't listen to the fear and the bullying that you're facing for standing up for what you know is right, because you will be on the right side of history. And I just think that it's not important. It is very important what we say and do, like declaring a sanctuary city, declaring a sanctuary county. These are all very important, but we have to do what everybody has been talking about on this panel this entire afternoon. It's that we have to speak up. No matter what the county does, no matter what our cities do, we have to speak up and stand up to the folks that believe in their heart of hearts that any kind of policy that impedes the sheriff from doing his job is going to lead to criminals in their home, breaking the law, that rapists and murderers. I mean, it's the Trump language that is coming out of our communities in terms of, and it's coming from people that it's unbelievable to me. I mean, it's like right here, we are living in the midst of extremely racist belief systems about immigration, and it's up to us to change that. And the way that we change that is through telling stories, through telling the stories of our family members and our friends who are living under this kind of fear right now, telling the economic story that is, we live in one of the most incredible places in the world because it crosses political lines in terms of the the support for comprehensive immigration reform. Republicans and Democrats in Monterey County recognize that we have an economy that is reliant on undocumented labor. Reliant. And so I think that we have a lot of opportunity, I think, to be a leader in this, but we are going to face bullies. And we are going to face people that are living in fear of what this kind of declaration, the declaration of a sanctuary city, for example, is going to mean for them. And I think that elected officials have to recognize now more than ever that they were elected to serve for a certain period of time. And whether they get reelected or not, it doesn't matter. That's not, they weren't elected to run for re-election. They were elected to serve, and right now is the time to stand up and to be on the right side of history.
So last night at the Salinas City Council, they announced that they are going to join a lawsuit against the current administration to oppose cutting their funding because of the stand that Salinas has taken on the degree of or lack of cooperation they will have with ICE. The place was packed, but people, those of us who are asking the city council to reconsider their vote about a sanctuary city, they didn't take it up last night. A beautiful moment was when one of the young leaders from Milpa spoke, addressed the council, then turned around to address the people and ask everyone to rise who is in support of immigrant rights. And it was a beautiful thing when everybody stood, including the conservative folks up front who had voted against the sanctuary city. And it was one of those moments of carrying, having an intersection, this connection of caring, and yet having very different ideas for strategies with how we deal with this. So that was good to see Mayor Gunter and others stand. One thing we can do is, learn from those who came before. When time came for sanctuary, those from Central America decades ago, congregations and households opened their doors to literally actually have human beings find sanctuary there and participate in civil disobedience and keep them from harm. Consider doing that. Consider, if you're willing to engage in civil disobedience, to take your privilege, be it that you're a sheltered person, be it you're a member of an organization that has space to use, or whatever it is, your economic standing, or just your ability to take risk. I can take a lot of risk. My elders have all passed. I don't have kids. I don't have some big important business I'm running where a lot of people are counting on me to be their employer. I can take a lot of risk. And I strive to use that privilege. That's a privilege, to be able to take risk. So I try to do that, no more than you all are doing and you are doing, but I mean, that's the framework I put around my life. Anyway, but consider doing that. Consider putting your body between harm's way and offering physical shelter, and be low-key about it. Some things we don't think about. Make sure you're not doing a lot of email about it, not making lists of check-in lists of folks and sending them around to everywhere. Just do it. Just do it and keep it low-key.
Yeah, I'm Lisa Kleisner, and I wanted to let you know that Linda Sassar was just arrested outside the Trump International for disorderly conduct, and most of the national organizers of this movement have been arrested and taken to a precinct in D.C. So your words are really powerful right now, because you know what? We got to stand up, and we got to be heard, and we got to show up. And these are women who have put their lives basically on hold since the beginning, since pretty much November 8th, for us. And we're all sitting here. Well, Patty and I think a few of us in the room were in D.C., and the way that they twisted what happened in D.C. you know, DC, it was the most powerful gathering I have witnessed and been a part of in my life. It was transformative for us. I had my daughter there. There were lots of family there. Jimmy Panetta was there with his daughter. Yeah, and it was the most diverse, harmonious crowd, every age, every color, every faith, and yes, a lot of signs. But the bottom line is, you know, I heard a little bit of rhetoric here today about, you know, these little divisions and kind of murmurs of disagreement, or this isn't enough, or we're not enough. Baloney. We are enough just as we are, and we've got to show up. So Kate, you are a really powerful speaker. I am, you know, I used to be part of the Democratic Party, but they don't represent my interests per se, particularly as a woman. And I would love to discuss with you how we could go forward to really have a party that does represent our interests. And if it's about rebuilding the Democratic Party, which really has to happen, let's do it together, and let's all do it together for all of you who are a lot younger than I am. So anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you for that news update. That's horrifying. But I do want to get back to the immigration discussion because I wanted to say a few things. I do apologize for misspeaking earlier. I got the name of the movement, A Day Without an Immigrant, confused with the popular movie inspired by that movement, A Day Without a Mexican. And but I do want to say really quick that, that I think that these kind of arrests, these erroneous and highly twisted versions of what is legal and what is illegal, I think it's going to keep happening. It's going to keep happening, and we have to watch out for the laws that are changing. That in several states, I think maybe 13 states, are working on laws to outlaw certain types of public protests and making it okay to do bodily harm to people who speak out and are protesting in the streets. That's extremely un-American. But back to the immigration topic, I just wanted to say that Kate spoke a little bit earlier about the need for reliable and accurate information. And the thing about the wall is that most immigrants come into this country legally at first with a visa, and their visa expires. It's really hard to get one, and it's really hard to take the next step after you have a visa, and either to get it renewed or take the next step and actually start the journey into becoming a citizen, which is extremely expensive depending on where you're coming from. And so not only is it going to be really expensive and completely ridiculous project, it's symbolic. It's really just symbolic, and it's sending a message that the people who are able to make that claim, claim that there should be a wall, they have been kind of hoisted up into the position that they're in because people believe them. People believe that for some reason that immigrants are a drain on this economy, and you just need to do your homework. And I'm not trying to educate anyone in this room, but I am encouraging you to educate people who you know that are perpetuating these myths. Don't let them spew them. Don't let them put that out into the atmosphere without telling them that they're wrong. Like, you know, and then in that moment, you're taking their energy and you're transforming it. It's a learning experience. It's an opportunity to change the way we talk about people behind their backs, because a lot of times you're not going to say that to an immigrant if you know that they are. You're not going to say that up to their face. So it is our responsibility to reverse that, the perpetuation of this misinformation. We depend on immigrant labor. You're absolutely right. And the fact that we have, I mean, in where we are in the Central Valley, we have, or I'm sorry, in the Central Coast, we have so much available at our fingertips. We have one of the best diets, or we could have one of the best diets if we choose to. But that comes at a price, and for everyone who has privilege, there's someone who's made a sacrifice. And sometimes those sacrifices are not voluntary. Sometimes they're just for survival. And we have to remember that. We have to remember that, you know, we are privileged because someone else is not. Thank you.
I want to speak to this again from the history of work that I did with the League of Women Voters in approximately 2007, 2008. They were looking at the issue, and from my personal perspective, I was wondering why this. It seemed like to me we're being bombarded with messages about some kind of problem with documentation, some kind of problem with this illegal concept. And so I had a lot of friends that are immigrants, family members who are immigrants, and I was hearing different anecdotal stories, and I brought them to the League, and the League of Women Voters said, you can't come to us with opinion. You need to find, research your facts. So I appreciated, that they had that high level of standard, that they wanted me to research the facts, to participate in their study. And in the end of about 6 months of study, I had a binder about this thick. But I think a lot of people are not aware that Halliburton had huge federal contracts to build these detention centers, and that people are not being deported. They're being housed in beds, tens of thousands, and no contact with the outside world. And this is what people are facing, and it's so terrifying and disgusting. ACLU, another good reason to go Saturday. They've been instrumental in getting some of the worst conditions evaluated and changed for certain private prisons. But it's about the money, and it's about the people that cannot get their paperwork because it takes, for some countries of origin, 10 years and more than $5,000. For those people who cannot get their paperwork, they are sometimes working and not being able to get paid. So, for example, people in King City, construction workers were brought up to the dunes in Marina to construct that beautiful shopping center, paid at less than a prevailing wage, right? Because they're from King City instead of the coast. And then just coincidentally, when the project was completed, ICE invaded King City and most of the men disappeared. So they were not even paid, right? So as a society, this is a huge problem. And that we don't know about it is in part because of censorship. And we don't believe in the US we could ever have censorship, but we have it. There are books, there are websites. You can find out which topics. There were times when I was doing that study that I would post things and my postings would be eliminated. If it was blogged, if it was Facebooked, everything would disappear. So I just think we need to really do that hard work. Somebody earlier said, they're tired of teaching or whatever. The work is on each individual to do that hard research, because you're not going to be spoon-fed by CNN. It's too ugly. It's too illegal in my mind. But it's sad, and I feel for everybody really. But to be that close to it is hard. I work with a lot of kids who are like in Marina. We feed between 150 and 180 kids per day at the teen center for breakfast. And when that was brought to the city council, the people said, where are the parents? Why are we feeding all these kids breakfast? And, this is coming from a different generation. This is a person who expected parents in the picture. But in Marina, we have that many kids who are living with each other. And maybe an uncle or maybe someone who is a friend of the family, because so many adults have been removed. Yeah, so it's we have some work to do. Thank you.
Thank you. So two things. One, I wanted to say that I don't have the specifics on it, but if you, I don't have the specifics on it, but if you can connect with somebody, Indivisible Monterey Bay, they can give you the information about a lawyer that is willing to help with for children to have a space to be safe when their parents have been taken away. So keep that in mind for everybody. The other question I had was the safe cities. I was wondering what are they doing to make it safe?
You mean sanctuary cities? Yes. Okay. So sanctuary cities are really just if it actually has legislation, or if the legislation actually has teeth to it, it says that no local funds will be used to assist federal operatives. So no local tax dollars will be used to support ICE and the federal witch hunt for undocumented folks. But otherwise, it doesn't really do much.
About having women in office, someone earlier, maybe it was Jan, mentioned Kayla Jones, councilwoman in Seaside,
Yes.
first one in 20 years. She brought forward the concept of Seaside, the notion of Seaside, asked for it to be agendized, for them to be a sanctuary city. So I just wanted to hold that up. I'm unsure where they are in the process. There was supposed to be a study session on March 2nd, and then I believe a resolution 2 weeks later was going to come forward. I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, I have a question that came to mind. I was wondering, so what advice could each one of you, or perhaps you, Ms. Kate, give to the parents of undocumented, the undocumented parents when they, nobody's there to pick up the kids? So what could you say to them to kind of calm them down and make them not so afraid, and maybe to calm the fears down with the children? Because I know there's thousands of kids in Salinas, and they're terrified each day that when they come home, their parent is not going to be there. Or the parent is terrified that they're not going to be able to go home and pick them up, right, to even leave work. So what advice can you give them, if any?
Are you asking me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, the story that I have for you is that, I have a lot of friends that are asking me this very same question. I know a young man who's going to work every day with his mom because he doesn't want to be separated from her because he's afraid that they'll come while she's at work. I know a lot of folks that are asking me, what do I do if someone comes to my door? We've seen horrifying photos. I mean, in LA, the number of people that have been picked up by ICE in the last couple weeks is an extraordinary number. And if you've seen on the news, you've seen stories of parents being taken away right in front of their children as they drop their child off at school with other children in the car. And so, I haven't done a lot of research into this at work. I've been dealing with the storm-related damage and all these other issues, but I really think that the ACLU is a really good resource, and that's where I've been pointing people in that direction, because I've read that if someone comes to your door, unless they have a warrant with your name on it, they actually cannot take you as a person, that they need a warrant that has your name on it, and you can simply ask them through the door, and they can pass that information under the door, and unless it has your name on it, you do not need to leave with them. You don't have to answer the door. And then I also, I just think that we in the privileged sector of society with documents, right, need to make ourselves available to everyone who is afraid. I went to a restaurant in Seaside on Saturday with my two sons, and in support of a family that runs the restaurant, because I knew that on Saturday night their restaurant is full and they're afraid that they might show up at the restaurant, right? And so I wanted to be there to just make them feel comfortable. And so I think that we can do those sorts of things, but in terms of legal expertise, I think the American Civil Liberties Union is the place to go, and they're providing a lot of information about what to and then be active in your political community. Reach out. Our office, I work for Supervisor Mary Adams, has been inundated with people who want this in place. That people they're anti-sanctuary cities and have this reprehensible fear, as far as I'm concerned. And I wasn't going to name her name because I try not to be political in this regard here, but we need to write our elected officials and encourage them that this is where they need to stand right now. This is our community, and we need to protect the most vulnerable right now. So.
Somebody else wanted to answer that question as well?
Absolutely. I can add something. I don't think that you can say anything to calm them down. This is where we are. And as the descendant of former slaves, we went through this exact same thing, and we had people helping us with the Underground Railroad. So we are in the exact same place. So it's up to us to open our homes, to open our churches, and to do something until we can get legislation that rebukes this mess. Thank you.
I
want
just-
to ask you, well, I want to ask Leah. So
Okay,
Leah,
well,
what do you
I
think?
just want to say we only really have 8 minutes left,
Okay,
so I know.
just wanted to hear from the social
Yeah.
workers though, because we heard from the, the doctor, and we heard from the politician, Ms. Kate. So now I want to hear from the social worker. What do you tell them as a social worker? And then I'm done.
That's a really good question. I have just been thinking, I hope that we all continue to work in solidarity with our immigrant undocumented brothers and sisters, especially in this community. These people are providing our food for us as farm workers, and it's just, to me, it's just like, and many, many other services, and besides that, they're human. And also, we have to really realize and keep remembering that the history, the legacy of colonialism in this country is what caused this to happen. And I think a lot of people forget that, and sometimes like have in the back of their mind that people are coming here to take advantage or whatever. But it's really about what this country has done to those other countries where people are coming from. Yes. So yeah.
That we can go over a little bit. And so Ms. Karen, she was the award recipient of the 2010 ACLU. So what do you say about all this?
Thank you very much. That was an award for achievement in civil rights. And I remember when they offered that to me, I was so humbled because I had not done any major thing. And they graciously said it's because of how they've heard me articulate why I do whatever I'm doing in my work, and that is that whether it's labor rights are, labor rights are workers' rights are human rights, women's rights are human rights, all of that. So my perspective is we stand between harm. That's what I'm doing. I don't know what you need to do. That's what I intend to do. I intend to stand where I'm able between harm and those who would be affected by these unjust, terrorizing policies, which are going to keep coming, because the point is they're burning the damn house down. They're throwing these they're lobbing these bombs one after another while they dismantle our government. But they're not going to win, because we are alert, we are alive, we are action-oriented, and everyone who was a leader before is stepping up more. Everyone who has helped before is becoming a leader. Everyone who has not had been able to help before is coming to help, and they're bringing their kids and their mom and everyone along. So we're going to do this thing.
So that was really wonderful. Can you all hear me? I wanted to talk on what the question that she asked, but I didn't come up here to talk on that. I came up here to talk on sanctuary cities. So if you bear with me, I want to address both of those issues. And I wanted to say that there are attorneys that we've been working with in Monterey County, the whole Central Coast area, that are preparing documents for people to fill out for their children to be more safer. And we are in the process of creating sanctuary communities. And as Alisha said, that sanctuary city doesn't really do much, but it brings in trust for the people. It makes the people feel like that they can trust their city officials not to cooperate with ICE. So when ICE is at the door, they know it's not the police at the door. ICE does not have the same authority for a warrant as the police do. If ICE comes to your house with a warrant, you don't even have to pay that any attention. As long as you don't answer your door, they can't kick your door down. If the cops come to your house for a warrant, they can kick your door down if they know you're in there. So we need to know that the police will not be cooperating with ICE. We need sanctuary cities. We have a sanctuary county. We have sanctuary cities that we're working on all over the Central Coast. And we need sanctuary cities because we need to know that our cops are not using our money, our resources to work against us and our community members and people we care about.
Thank you for doing that. Thank you for your leadership.
And we also need to know that these are our neighbors, been our neighbors for years, been our neighbors a long time. We've learned to love and respect these people. And just because they're not us, they're a part of us. So we need to be willing to step up to the plate and to share in whatever their concerns are, to try to help with their concerns. And so that's why I take, and I have led in Monterey County, the effort for sanctuary cities. And we're working all over. We're working all over Monterey County to make sure we have sanctuary cities. Now, I'm standing here today saying that because I expect people to take off and lead in every one of these cities in Monterey County.
Miriam, can you share the name of your organization that you're talking about?
So my organization is Community for Unity.
And when
so
do you meet?
And Alisha is a part of it. and we meet tonight, by the way,
All right.
from 7 to 9. And we meet at the Monterey Peace and Justice Center. And we're doing a lot of things. We're working on recalling ICE, recalling the sheriff who has ICE in this county jail. Yes. So our team is working on a lot of issues, okay, that deals with helping to protect the immigrants and refugees in our community that we know put a lot of work into what they do and come here for safe haven, that we know that have been just scared out of their wits. They're not going to school. Their kids are not going to school. They're not even, I went to the welfare department because I talked to some people. They're not even coming to get their food stamps renewed. There's so many things that is dangerous about not declaring a sanctuary city, even though in some areas it's sort of symbolic, but it does mean that our monies in our city that we pay taxes for will not be used to harass our community. And also to share with you about the sanctuary city Seaside, just to let you know, thank God for Kayla mentioning and putting it on the docket. And before she did that, our team was already working on it, and we were already approaching the bench and asking them to make Seaside a sanctuary city. I had went before them, team members had went before them from our group, and when Kayla got on the seat, within a month or two, she requested it to go on the docket. We appreciate Kayla, and we need to thank her. And we need to work together as a team of people, a group of people, to make sure that the things we value are protected. Our values need to be protected because we the people have the power. We have the power. They don't have the power. We have the power. If we could shut it down at this level right here, shut it down at the local level, and nothing's moving. Yep. Nothing's happening. Nobody's going nowhere. Nobody's getting nothing done. And let me tell you how that works with the community, with the sanctuary community. When the cities are sanctuary cities, we don't have to worry about our police. But when the sanctuary communities, all we have to do as people is we have a red card, and I was looking for that when I heard people talking about it. I left it in the car down the street. I can give every one of you one because I have a box of them right now. But I left them in the car and didn't think to bring them. But these red cards, we make sure we get it to every immigrant. And they show this red card to whoever's asking them questions. You might want to say your name, but you do not have to cooperate with ICE. And as we continue to educate you, and part tonight of our meeting will be, if you want to come get some red cards and educate people, come and learn some stuff tonight. And so if you want to come to their door, knocking on their door, we want to teach every community member. This is what makes a sanctuary community. Every community member, don't open your door. Tell your kids don't open the door. Lock your door because they can walk in and say it was open. We want to teach them all these different little things that are twisted up in our society and community. We don't know why ICE says police on the back. They don't have the same authority. So now we have to teach these people to be able to differentiate between the police in the city so they can feel safe and the ICE police. So as a sanctuary community, that's what we do. We tell them to show that red card. We tell them to say their name and don't open their doors. And that warrant, just to let you know, that warrant is not powerful. That warrant has no meaning. They cannot kick your door down as ICE people with a warrant. You don't have to say your name if you don't want to. You can just show your red card out the window. Matter of fact, one of the attorneys that should be there tonight to help do a short training, she has said that you don't even have to talk to them when they come to your door. You don't have to respond. You don't have to answer your door. You don't have to do anything. Immigration attorneys. So we have several different attorneys that's been working with our groups, and we'd love for all the groups to kind of be working together so we're all working on the same thing, and we can get leaders in each city to lead the sanctuary city effort and then create a sanctuary community and to be trained. So we want to train trainers. And we did a meeting on Saturday where we trained the trainers. And the trainers were able to learn how to teach other people how to protect themselves from ICE. And that's what I just wanted to share. And we do have people in place that can help people that have children that we can't stop the worrying, but if we ease the mind somewhat and give them everything that they need, teach them what they need to know, then that'll help some, that'll help ease.
I know you guys are running out of time.
Yeah, so let's just quickly do these last two questions.
Yes, I'm a very
and then-
fast talker.
yeah.
My name is Laura Dare, and I have 3 quick points, and they're very quick. The first point is when you stick your neck out, there's always going to be somebody to chop your head off. So the first step for me, more than just running for office, like the very first step, is just speak your truth. And sometimes it's not going to get liked, and people are not going to respond positively, but the people start to come out of the woodwork and go, yeah, right on, I agree. And then you know you're doing the right thing. The second thing is I'm the mother of boy-girl twins. They're 13 years old. I see from the very beginning, I'm a singer-songwriter, and I always would talk about this in performance. I see from the very beginning that they are marketed to differently, they are spoken to differently, they are celebrated differently. My son had Iron Man and Spider-Man and this man and that man, and my daughter had Hello Kitty. Hello Kitty has no mouth. She has no mouth. My daughter said, Mommy, she has no mouth. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, you know. I'm giving you a mouthless thing to... Ridiculous. And the third thing was CNN and MSNBC and all of them, you know, thank you for trying originally to be a news network, but they are no longer news networks. I ride an exercise bicycle with the sound off, and I just look at the pictures so I can hear my Zumba music on my head while I'm, you know, exercising. And I just see white men, and this is something I posted today and said, I'm going down to this thing. I want to hear smart ladies talk. You women are amazing. I'm just in love, in love, in love, in love, in love, in love. How hungry I was to hear you, and how hungry we all are. But the thing I wanted to say about the news is I finally got my husband to realize we were like, shit. They're saying the same thing every 5 minutes. This is not news. This is like some sort of weird, I mean, you literally will see Trump's world. You're like, it's Trump's world now? What? So if you watch it with the sound off, you really begin to realize what they're doing. And this is what I posted today. You see groups of white men in suits, and they're all standing around with not the slightest shred of irony that nobody else is at the podium, just a bunch of white guys in suits. And I'm on my bicycle going, what the hell? Oh, there.
My comment's kind of along the same lines. I wanted to sort of bring it back to women. I worked on the Hillary campaign, and including the last 4 days of Get Out the Vote, which were like 12-hour days. Karen was there. One thing that has sustained me in all the grief after the election is getting choked up. There were three middle school girls from Carmel Middle School, 12-year-old, who came to work the phone banks. They loved it so much they begged their parents to bring them back the next day. They inspired me. They were so wonderful. A 16-year-old girl from Santa Catalina. They were awesome. They were so wonderful. They really, I think about them a lot. And then the next thing I wanted to say was at the Women's March at CSUMB. 1,000 years ago, I graduated from Humboldt State with a BA in social work. And when I got home from the Women's March, I went to my computer and looked up the master's program at CSUMB. Now, I'm not going to do it. It's too much work. It's too much work. But it's because I love you. I love you. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, just bringing that back, thank you. I think that as social workers, we really have the power to have these small little encounters with people every day with our clients, and that's really what's going to change a lot, because it's our duty to empower our clients, and those are the oppressed people, and if we empower them, they can get up and find their voice and speak for themselves. So I just want to thank all of our panelists for joining us, everybody here, and I hope that you all go home and don't do the dishes, don't cook dinner. Yeah.
Yay. Yeah.